Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of Prime Video's new action heist comedy, The Pickup, which stars Eddie Murphy, Pete Davidson, and Keke Palmer. This film is directed by Tim Story, the director of such films as Ride Along, Barbershop, the first two Fantastic Four films from the early 2000s. This film is about a routine cash pickup that turns into a deadly pursuit when two mismatched armored truck drivers are ambushed by ruthless criminals with plans beyond the cash. You know, as a child of the 80s and 90s, I guess you can count that too. You know, I grew up in an era where Eddie Murphy was it, man. Whenever Eddie Murphy showed up in something, that was just must-see TV, movies, whatever. I grew up with 48 Hours, with Coming to America, with Beverly Hills Cop, with The Golden Child, and so on and so forth. The list goes on and on, what this man has contributed to my childhood. You know, Saturday Night Live, Eddie Murphy Raw, Delirious. I mean, come on, man. Eddie Murphy was can't miss back then, bruh. And it hurts me. It really does hurt me to see it come to this point. Recently, his last film was Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. on Netflix, which I enjoyed. You know, it was a nostalgic trip, but as far as being up there with the pantheon of Beverly Hills Cop films, nah, it ain't up there with that. But it was watchable, it was enjoyable. But aside from that, nothing in the past few years, especially coming from Prime Video. His films that he's put on Prime Video has been god awful. Going back to Coming to America, the sequel, which was horrible. Candy Cane Lane, which was borderline unwatchable. And then you get this, The Pickup. I don't know why this movie was made. I don't even know. Maybe it's a Prime Video thing. You know, I don't know, because just a couple of weeks ago, or was it last week? I don't know. I'm trying to get it out my head. Ice Cube was in that god-awful film, War of the Worlds, which was on Prime Video. I don't know, man. Prime Video has not been clicking as of late. They just been throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. It ain't nothing sticking. The Pickup, I don't even know what this movie is. Is it an action movie? Is it a comedy? Is it a buddy cop kind? What is this? You know, because it's not even funny. At least be funny. You have arguably the greatest, well, at least one of, and I don't think we could argue with that, one of the greatest comedians of all time in Eddie Murphy. And you have Pete Davidson. Now, I'm not a Pete Davidson guy. I never understood the allure with Pete Davidson. He's not funny to me. You know, I tried watching his stand-ups, and it just doesn't click with me. And that's just, you know, it's all subjective. Everybody has their own individual taste. But he's not funny to me. And you have Keke Palmer in this thing, who has been funny in films before. She is an awesome actress. That goes without saying. Just earlier this year, she was in that movie with SZA. Why is the name escaping me right now? But it was a pretty funny movie. And so you put all of these elements together, you would think you could get something out of this. There was nothing, absolutely nothing in this film that was funny. The story was bad. It was a bad story. It was poorly paced, poorly directed. And Tim Story, I mean, my rants on Tim Story has been legendary. I'm to the point now, after I finished watching this movie, regrettably, I came to the realization that Tim Story is the worst director of all time. And it's hard for me to say that because I loved Barbershop. I actually liked the first Ride Along movie. But everything else he's done has not worked at all, man. Nothing works with this dude in his direction. You know how hard it is to make Eddie Murphy not funny? It's like they purposely, when you watch this movie, it's like they're purposely not trying to make him funny. It's either the way it was written, the way it was directed. I don't know what it was, or a combination of both, but it didn't work. I mean, he was horrible in this movie. And Eddie Murphy has been in some stinkers. Let's not get it twisted, Vampire in Brooklyn. Come on. But he was funny in that. Meet Dave. Even that had some comedic scenes that he actually worked in that movie. And my God, Norbit was horrible, but it was funny. It had some funny parts in it. This had nothing that I laughed at. You know what's sad? And I put it out there already. I'm not a Pete Davidson guy. You know what the best part of this movie was? Pete Davidson. I actually enjoyed Pete Davidson in this movie. He was the best part of this movie. With that being said, he wasn't great. he was not firing on all cylinders here. It wasn't like he had me gut busting, laughing, rolling on the floor. No, it was none of that. But hey, at least he was interesting. At least his character had somewhat of a story. It was poorly done, but he had a story. And it looked like he was bouncing off of Eddie Murphy pretty good. Now, the chemistry between the two of them, with Eddie Murphy and Pete Davidson, I thought it was pretty decent for the way those characters were written. That element worked. I did enjoy that for the most part. But when you have two comedians, granted from two different generations, you would think they can kind of banter off of each other, especially this is a character in Eddie Murphy's character who didn't too much care for Pete Davidson's character. It made it known he didn't like him. You would think there'd be some insults, some mudslinging and stuff like that. These are comedians. I think they can rib, but we didn't get that. There was none of that, and it's frustrating to see. The movie had no story that would keep you captivated for an hour and a half. This heist or chase, whatever you want to call it, that took place in this film was completely ridiculous. The way it was shot was completely ridiculous and structured, I should say. They had a chase scene on a highway where it was just an armored car and the two cars from the robbers for miles. There was no car in either direction. And you wanted me to believe that. You actually wanted me to buy that with all that was going on. They had another chase later on in the film where they did have vehicles for maybe 5 or 6 seconds, and then those vehicles disappeared. And it was just the armored car and the characters from the film and maybe a couple of police cars here and there. That's it. It's like everything that's going on was in a bubble, and the rest of the world was just blocked off. Nobody knew what was going on. It was like they were in their own little simulation or something like that, and everybody else was just oblivious to what was going on. It threw me out. It just threw me out of the film altogether. There was no twist in this movie whatsoever. This movie needed a twist, desperately needed a twist, and it didn't deliver. It could have saved the movie. Well, not I say saved, but it wouldn't have saved it. But at least it would have made things interesting. This was so bland. It was so bland. Chat GPT had to write this movie. It was so bland. The dialogue, it was, my God, what was happening here? And I take it back, because it just dawned on me. I take back Pete Davidson was the best date in this movie. He was the second best thing in this movie. The best thing in this movie was Andrew Dice Clay, and he was only in it for maybe 5 minutes. And I guess it's a little biased there because I'm a big Andrew Dice Clay fan from back in the day. I think he's hilarious. So I actually enjoyed him. He understood what movie he was in. Nobody else did. Nobody else did. Keke Palmer was in a serious heist film. Pete Davidson was in a stoner comedy, and Eddie Murphy was just there. Nobody was on the same page in this movie. Everybody was in different movies. It's like they got different notes or a different version of the script and just executed it, and nobody told them different. Yeah, this is one of the worst. It's not the worst. It's not War of the Worlds bad. I don't think anything can top that. But this is something that 9 times out of 10, or should I say 9.5 times out of 10, you know what? I'm going to go the whole 10. I won't be watching this again. I seen it once. I'm good. The Pickup, which is currently on Prime Video, starring Eddie Murphy and Pete Davidson, gets a letter grade of a D+. Yeah, it's man, I would say it's disappointing, but disappointment, you only get disappointment when you have some level of expectation. I had none. I had zero expectations of this movie, and they were met. I would love to know, what was your thoughts of The Pickup, and what do you think is next for Eddie Murphy? What do you think he needs to do? He didn't went back to the well. You know, he did a sequel to Coming to America that was horrible. He did a mixed reaction when it came to Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. You know, so he tried to go back to the well. That wasn't super well received. He's trying other new things, you know, The Pickup and Candy Cane Lane and stuff like that. He's trying that, and that's not really getting there. So what should he do? Should he go back? Maybe he ought to do a stand-up special. And that's what I think. He needs to do Raw Part 2 or Delirious 2, you know, Electric Boogaloo or something like that. I don't know. But this current route that he's going on, it is hard to watch. And this is coming from an Eddie Murphy super fan. But I would love to know what you think the next steps should be. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel. Smash that like button on this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of The Pickup. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.